Hello, welcome back to the channel. So there are a lot of Relic sets in the game now, and while some of the new ones have been pretty good or have just kind of changed how some characters are built entirely, some of the older ones do feel like pretty mediocre now. So I wanted to look at some of the Relic sets that feel like they're kind of just been like forgotten and see what can be done to make them better. Now I do want to say that I have already made a video like this, so any of the sets that were in that video won't be in this one. And I'm not saying that any of these sets are like unusable. I think that like you can use them. I'm saying that they don't really feel that great compared to what we have now. So the first set that I do want to talk about is the Champion set, which has just gotten like insanely power crept by like basically every other set in the game that we've gotten. The set is only really decent on like Clara and Yunli, and for those characters we just have way better options now. Like Ash Blazing has way better damage potential, and it's just better overall for like follow-up. The Poet set is great for Yunli and Clara since they want to be a bit slower so they get hit a lot more. And for Yunli specifically, the Valorous set is infinitely a better option since it increases the damage of her ultimate, which is her main source of damage. It's not like the Champion set is that bad, and maybe you could find a use for like the two-piece effect, but at the same time, like what physical character really needs a 10% physical damage boost that they can't just get more damage from a different set from, you know? So what I would do to at least try to make it a bit more interesting is one, add an effect where the wearer is more likely to be attacked, since this is mainly like, you know, the counter set. Then allow the buff to stack up to 10 times, and on top of that, if the character performs a follow-up attack, they get 2 stacks instead of just 1 stack. So this would first make it a lot better for characters like Yunli and Clara, since they can stack it up pretty fast, and, you know, just get a lot more damage in since it stacks up to 10 times now. But even maybe for like other follow-up characters, and if we ever get a physical follow-up character in the future, it could be a decent option, though I still think maybe other sets would still probably be better, and they would probably just get a more specialized set anyway. Now, in a similar vein of being just kind of outdated is Passerby, which I think that the two-piece effect of this set is fine. Like, it can be good if you just need like a generic like two-piece option for a bunch of healers, but why would you ever use the 4-piece of this set? Unless you're trying to do some like weird zero cycles stuff. That's like the only case I can really see you wanting to use this. Firstly, it is like one of the only sets in the game that doesn't have a continuous effect, so it's really hard to justify it over a lot of the other options. And also, we have the Warrior set now, which is kind of just like the best option for basically any healer in the game. Why would you ever use 4-piece Passerby over 4-piece Warrior? It just doesn't make any sense. So I think the best way to make Passerby better is to lean more into like the niche for it, which is more like on skill point teams. So I would add a new effect, that is when the wearer heals an ally, they recover 1 skill point and increase the healed ally's damage by 10%, which can trigger twice per turn. So this would at least make it a like decent option for like skill point teams, you know, maybe like when Archer comes out. The Warrior would still probably be better. That set is just so nuts, like I can't believe they made that set a real thing. Like, now for the last like actual Relic set I want to talk about before we get into like planar sets, we have Wastelander. Wastelander like isn't an awful set, but it's just kind of Pioneer, but worse, since you only get the crit damage buff from hitting imprisoned enemies, which is only gonna happen if you're relying on like breaking the enemies, which in that case you should just be using a break set, or if you're just mainly only fighting like imaginary weak enemies, which isn't always going to happen, or you're using Welt. But even on Welt, Pioneer is still better on most teams. So what I would do is add a new effect where after the wearer uses their ultimate, their next skill will imprison the enemy for 1 turn. Then change the way the buff works to be when an ally hits an enemy, they get a buff that lasts for 2 turns instead of only getting the effect when they hit a debuffed enemy, so that you can at least try to get the buff more consistently. This would at least make it like a good option for Welt, and if we ever get any more imprisoned characters in the future. And I could maybe see like some sort of like more niche synergies with other characters, like maybe like Acheron or something, though the other set would still probably just be better. And also, I kind of doubt that we are ever going to get more imprisoned characters, because it kind of seems like Hoyo want things like Imprison and Freeze to not be good, which I do kind of get because that would just trivialize the entire combat, but that's a discussion for a whole other video. But moving on to planar ornaments, which also have a bunch of ones that are kind of just outdated because they came out when the game launched. One set that immediately comes to mind for me is the Bellabog set, which even on most preservation characters, it isn't really worth it to run it, since you don't need that much defense to get value out of them, and you would rather just use like a supportive set. But even then, the only characters that really want to build effect hit rate are Japard and March, who, like, besides just having problems with their kits in general, would still rather use supportive sets like, Broken Keel or Penacody or even like Lushaka, because at some point just getting more defense just kind of gets diminishing returns, and you kind of gotta, actually kill the enemy. So what I would do is, keep the first effect of increasing the defense, then change the second effect to be if the wearer's defense is past a certain threshold, it increases the party's effect hit rate by 20%. So it would at least be like a decent option if you want to run like a preservation character with like a dot team, maybe like any sort of nihility characters, or if we ever like get another preservation character in the future that wants to be able to like debuff enemies or something. But I don't know if we're ever gonna get another preservation character. It's been like a year since we got Adventure Eden. But anyway, I digress. I think it would at least make it a more interesting option and be more in line with the other supportive sets that we have in the game. Now, for the last set that I want to talk about in this video is another one that is just really outdated, and it's like, why would you ever use it over like anything else, which is Space Sealing Station. It's not the worst set in the world, it's just kind of boring, but also most DPSs now either have like their own dedicated sets, like, Castrus or Phynon, or like most of the 3.0 characters, or they just have like better options. Like, Brilliant Arena can be a good option, Uzumo can be a good option on certain characters. Even like Firmament is just like way better like generic DPS option for most characters. Like, and it just kind of just does what Space Sailing Station does, but just better, since it also buffs your overall damage instead of just only giving you attack. Even on like dot characters who are like the main ones who want a lot of attack, we have, Cosmic Enterprise, which can be good on characters like Black Swan, just to be able to get their buffs more consistently. Or even the new set we just got, Revelry by the Sea, which is probably the best dot set now. And like, the main issue with Space Sailing Station is that it's way too generic for any character to want to actually use it. So what I would do is try to at least give it some sort of niche. So I would change it to, if the wearer's attack is at a certain threshold, increases skill damage by 12 to 24%. So if it's at like the lower threshold, they get 12, but if it's at the higher threshold, they get 24. Sort of like how, Cypher's ability works. This would at least give it like a niche for characters who mainly want to rely on their skill for damage. Obviously, depending on how hard the thresholds are to hit, you would maybe need to change the buff numbers and stuff like that. It would at least make it a more interesting option than it is now, because right now it's just kind of boring, like, oh wow, you get more attack. And that's just kind of it. Like, the main problem with a lot of these older sets, and just like kind of characters as well, is that they were designed to be just generically good, which just doesn't really fit how much more like team and like archetype focused the game is now. So like, if you're not like really good for a certain character, there's just not really a point of running you. Or if you don't really like fulfill a specific niche, like, like Lushaka does, then there's just not really a reason to use the set over like better options. Unless you just don't really have any good pieces of the set, but that's like a whole other discussion. But I don't know, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below, like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.